Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnu Pad Paramasuri Rajkacharya Shota Shota Shri Shrimati Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Radha Giridhari Ki Shri Jagnaballa Subhadramai Ki Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON San Diego Ki Nittai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to Summer Devotees. All glories to Summer Devotees. All glories to Summer Devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, everyone. I didn't hear the introduction, so I don't know what was covered, so I'll give a brief introduction about myself. My name's Ananda Caitanya Das. I'm from London. You can probably tell that from my accent. I'm based in ISKCON, Hungary, in Budapest, in the temple there. And I've been to the US a few times before, but this is a trip with a particular mission. And that mission is sharing Krishna in Vrindavan. So we have a set of books outside, and I'll be coming on to introducing those books a little later in the talk. And it's really focusing in on what is the goal of Krishna consciousness. Who's here? Who is chanting regularly? Who's chanting Hare Krishna regularly? Okay, a few of you. Who's here for the first time? Oh, a few people. Wow, welcome. What made you come?
I moved to the US recently. It was the first time to arrive.
From where?
From India.
Okay. Okay. And, madam? Yes, okay. Sir, what made you come today?
Right. Just out of curiosity, I have been in San Diego for half a year.
Okay.
This is the first time I'm coming to ISKCON temple.
Okay, wonderful. And who else put their hands up? Yes, madam.
I will be easier
Oh.
5 years ago in
Mhm.
Rishikesh.
Mm.
And my son, he graduated from Rishikesh Shiva Yoga Peace
Mm.
as a teacher.
Mm.
Yeah. And what's happening with when here and some woman who advertise books on a street, and she offered me, and I said, where is the temple? Because, and she said, yes, it's over there, and that's Krishna probably send me right
Mm.
to your temple.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Welcome. And sir, please.
I used to go to ISKCON temple in India,
Right.
but then I feel little lost in the busy thing of the world, material things, and I want to find my inner peace. So I want to see myself, I can find the peace in me.
Very nice. Yes, it's a busy world. There are so many roles and responsibilities which everyone has to take care of, especially family people. You have children and partners, and then work life, and then social life, and then some time, hopefully, for spirituality also. And fitting all of those things into the timetable, there's only 24 hours in the day, can be difficult. It's not an easy balance. The Bhagavad Gita, you've all heard of the Bhagavad Gita, is really the handbook for life. It gives very powerful instructions into how we can live and balance our lives in such a way that we can. Fulfilling our material duties is a must because we live in this material world. There are functions to be taken care of. But fundamentally, the Bhagavad Gita is teaching us, Jesus put it very nicely, he said, how to be in the world, but not of the world. I know that quote always stuck with me. To be in the world, but not of the world. To really have the understanding that I have duties and functions to play here. However, I don't belong here. This isn't my ultimate home. And I think if anyone's experienced the world, then that's a flashing message which keeps coming back. That actually whatever I try in this world, it doesn't bring real satisfaction to the heart and mind. So they were observing a musk deer in nature. This deer was running from one end of the forest to the other crazily. Running, like it was searching for something. And it would get to the end and then go in another direction and run. And they're wondering, scientists, etc., they were just observing this deer and thinking, what is driving this deer? Why is it running from one end to the other? What's the purpose? So they did a bit of research into this musk deer. And what they realized was that there was a fragrance entering the nostrils of the deer. And it was looking for the source of this fragrance. And it thought it was coming from this direction, so it ran there. And another direction, so it ran. What it didn't realize, the deer, it didn't realize was that this fragrance was coming from a pouch under its neck. And in that pouch is musk. This musk is used by perfumers to make the most expensive perfumes in the world. And it's naturally occurring in this pouch under its neck. So the aroma from this pouch was entering its nostrils. It was thinking that this aroma is coming from outside, but actually it's right under its nose, as we say in English. Very instructive, because very often in our lives we're looking externally for something which is actually internal. There is a hole in our heart, something missing. And whatever we try to fill that hole with, it doesn't quite work. Maybe it seems to work for some time, for some period, but it doesn't last. Because that hole isn't actually truly being filled. There's only one thing that can fill this hole. That hole has a particular shape, just like a jigsaw puzzle. The final piece has one shape. You can try and put in other pieces from another jigsaw, but it won't fit. There's one piece that fits this jigsaw. And in our hearts, there's one piece. What is that one piece? It's Krishna. That shape is Krishna shaped. We have to learn how to put Krishna into that hole in our hearts. And this is really the function of these temples. Srila Prabhupada is our founder, Acharya. He very selflessly, at the age of 70, almost 70, in 1965, he traveled to the West, and he began in New York to share the ancient Vedic wisdom with the people of the world. Actually, once Prabhupada was in London, and a reporter asked him, you know, when he would land, then sometimes there would be many people, many devotees who would come to greet him, as well as reporters who were taking pictures and wanted to write news reports on him and his activities. So one reporter, he asked, so Swamiji, they used to call him Swamiji. So Swamiji, what brings you here to London? Why have you come to London? And he was very proud. I'm from London. This man's from India, you know. He said, what brings you here to London, sir? So Srila Prabhupada said, you Britishers, you came to India. You took gold, rubies, diamonds, emeralds, all the riches. You even took the Kohinoor. I won't go into the history of the Kohinoor. But you even took the Kohinoor. You took all of the riches, but you forgot the most precious, important jewel. That is the Vedic wisdom, and I've come here to give it to you. Powerful. And I heard that is stuck with me. So Srila Prabhupada came to give this Vedic wisdom to the people of the world, because ultimately wherever we're from, Prabhupada wasn't in the bodily concept of life. He didn't care about those things really. He was making a point to the man that you are very materialistic. He's looking at Prabhupada from a materialistic point of view, but ultimately what really matters, what is really important, what is really important is God, Krishna. And so Prabhupada came to give this Vedic wisdom to the people of the world so that they could come in touch with what they forgot. So therefore Srila Prabhupada created temples. These temples are embassies for the spiritual world, so that people who have not forgotten Krishna, Prabhupada says, can come in touch with him again. So when we come into this temple environment, actually the word for temple, there are a few words for temple. One of the words is mandir. Yeah, some of you will know that word, mandir. Where does this word come from? Mandir. Man means mind, and dhir means dhira, steady, peaceful. So the mandir, the temple, is an environment where when you enter, you feel a peace and a serenity. Who feels that peace when they come here? Yeah, hopefully most of you. Yeah, some of you are fortunate enough to live here. Yeah, so you should always be peaceful. Doesn't always work that way. I have experience, but this is the environment of the temple, mandir, a place where the mind becomes peaceful, in harmony. Very, very important. So this environment where devotion to the Lord takes place should bring that experience to our minds and hearts. But even more important than that is that it should evoke devotion to the Lord. One thing is peace. It's another thing to feel devotion and dedication towards the Lord. And that comes from more education. So the environment of the temple evokes peace, fine. But through studying and through reading, one can actually gain a deeper purpose in life and really learn how to fill that gap in the heart. So there's a very nice verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a graduate study to the Bhagavad Gita. It says, Sa vai mana Krishna, no, 126. 126. Yayatma suprasiddhati. Yayatma suprasiddhati. Sa vaipum samparo dharmo yatho bhaktira dokshaje ahaitukiya pratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. How to bring real satisfaction to the self. this verse is giving the answer. We all want satisfaction. Suprasiddhati. So there's prasiddh, very happy. Suprasiddh means very, very happy. How to bring that to the soul, to the self? Yatho bhaktir dokshaje, by engaging in bhakti towards the Lord, towards Krishna. And this is really what the temple is for, so that when we come here, our natural, actually we all have a very natural and eternal relationship with Krishna, with the Lord. No matter what we do, no matter what happens in our lives, we all have this two-way reciprocal relationship with Krishna. And our temples are here to evoke and help and support the development or the redevelopment of that relationship. It's something which we've forgotten, but it's eternal to us. So that's the reason Srila Prabhupada built temples, and he also built farm communities. Because if you see, you can come here to the temple and it's a wonderful environment. It's very beautiful, very peaceful, wonderful devotees, deities, etc. But you step one step outside and suddenly the atmosphere changes. The atmosphere is very materialistic and it's bombarding us and taking us away from spirituality, away from Krishna consciousness. That's the nature of the material energy. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada also created farm communities. So the idea was that they would be self-sufficient, so that people could live with nature, live in harmony with nature, in an environment which was more conducive for spiritual realization. And therefore, for example, here in America, Srila Prabhupada instituted New Vrindavan and Gita Nagari. So these are wonderful communities where there's a potential for them to become self-sufficient. I lived in Bhaktivedanta Manor for quite some years, and that is also a wonderful, it's 70 or 80 acres, there's 60 cows, some organic farming going on, beautiful deities which were installed by Srila Prabhupada, and actually he instructed that 600 pastime places should be established there in New Gokul of Bhaktivedanta Manor, so that devotees could go there and they could feel like they were in Vrindavan. So Vrindavan is the place where Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago and enacted many wonderful pastimes. And those places where he enacted those pastimes are therefore very special, are worshipable. But Vrindavan is far away. I don't know, maybe 10,000 miles away from where we are now. So it's not easy to go there. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada wanted that people could access that Vrindavan atmosphere and ideally live in that Vrindavan atmosphere without having to go all the way to Boma Vrindavan, 3 hours south of Delhi. And therefore, he created these farm communities so that they could be self-sufficient, not have to be dependent on the very fragile infrastructures, economic and otherwise, which we see in our world today. Things are, you know, if we really look at the news and we see what's going on, it's quite a worrying situation. This is something which Srila Prabhupada predicted 50 years ago. So everything is playing out. And so his vision to build farm communities which were separate from the system was very wise, a lot of vision. So the idea of these farm communities was twofold, therefore, so that devotees could exist without having to be dependent on the system. And secondly, to have an atmosphere and an environment where remembering Krishna was much easier, an environment which was much more conducive for God consciousness. So, taking that instruction, the devotees in ISKCON Hungary, which is where I reside now, they've created a farm community. It's called New Vraja. It's 800 acres, so it's large. They grow their own vegetables. They have 15 to 20 different vegetables. They grow 7 or 8 different fruits, some grains, And they have 70 cows. They have a beehive for honey. They have parrots. Hungary is not quite where you'd expect parrots to be, but we have parrots too. And many other projects going on. And 600 pastime places have been established there. So there's a Nandagram, a Javat, a Vrashana, Radhakund, Shamkund, Govardhan Parikram is all there. So you can go there. So devotees, especially those who live in Hungary and those in surrounding countries, can easily access that place, although everyone's welcome to come and visit. And just enter into that Vrindavan atmosphere, to visit those holy places and to remember those pastimes which took place there. And in that way, to be in Vrindavan without having to travel. From Hungary, it's maybe 5,000 or 6,000 miles. So devotees, therefore, they understood that there's 600 pastime places established here, but they wanted to know what those pastimes were and where the holy places were, because they weren't all marked out on the land. And therefore, Shivaram Swami, who was the GBC for many years in Hungary, he's recently passed over his responsibilities to others, and he's focusing more on writing. He wanted to create a pamphlet, a small book, which would help devotees to do parikram, or to go around to the holy places and to understand their significance. And he planned the booklet to be 100 pages, so that devotees would have a basic idea of the holy places and what pastimes took place there. But the book expanded to 300 pages, to 500 pages, to 1,000 pages, and eventually to 6,000 pages. So that's a set of 9 books. And that's what we're sharing outside. It's a beautiful set of books. It's called Nava Vraja Mahima. So the glories of New Vrajadam, which is non-different to Vrindavan. So I'll talk a little more about those books in a few minutes. But what makes a place, though, how can we say that this place is non-different to Vrindavan? Of course, there can be nothing which is as potent as a place where Krishna came personally and performed his pastimes. But how can we invoke the Dham into a particular place? It is based on, and this is Dham Tattva, it's based on pure devotional service. So the deities are very, very important. In New Vrajadam, there are deities called Radha Shyam Sundar. Some of you may have seen them. They're very, very beautiful. But the concept is that a place becomes a dham. For example, do we have a name for New Govardhan? New Govardhan Dham, we say. So what makes a place a dham? So when Vidura goes traveling, Vidura was the uncle of the Pandavas, and he didn't want the war to happen, the Battle of Kurukshetra. So he tried to avoid it in many, many ways. He advised Dhritarashtra, the king. He tried to talk some sense into Duryodhan. He tried many means to avoid the war, but he wasn't able to. So just before the war began, he left for pilgrimage, and he traveled all around India. For 38 years, he was gone. By the time he returned, of course, we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam 4th and 5th cantos, it describes Vidura's travels, his conversations with great sages like Uddhava and Maitreya Muni. When he returns, then Yudhishthira Maharaj welcomes him. And he says, Bhavad Vidha Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani Svantastena Gadabrita. He glorifies Vidura. He says, Vidura, you're a pure devotee, you're a Bhagavata. That means you carry the Lord in your heart. That means you're a walking Tirthasthan. So because he carries the Lord in his heart, the pure devotee, of course the Lord is in everyone's heart, but someone who is conscious of it and cultivating their relationship with that Lord, that person is a pure devotee, he's a Bhagavata. So Vidura was one such person, and he said that you purify holy places themselves. So, for example, many people in India, they go to the river Ganges to deposit their sins. They sin, and then they go to purify themselves in the river Ganges. That makes these holy places, such as the Ganges, laden with sin. So the Ganges didn't want to descend onto the earth planet, we hear in the 9th canto. But one of the arguments used to persuade her to come was that great devotees, like Vidura, will come. They will bathe in your waters. They have no sin to speak of. But by bathing in your waters, they will relieve you of your sins. It's amazing. A pure devotee can purify holy places themselves. So pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada also, they purify tirthastans. They are tirthastans themselves. So wherever Srila Prabhupada walked is very special. So for example, he walked in, what is it called in San Francisco? Golden Gate Park. He walked in Hyde Park in London, you know. So devotees go there. And, you know, there's the Hare Krishna tree in New York. Devotees go there, and they're special places. Even if just once Prabhupada walked through there, it becomes special. It becomes like a tirthastan, we say. But a place where pure devotional service is carried out for a more intense period, with many devotees, and with pure devotion, that place becomes a dham. So, for example, we have deities, beautiful, Radha Giridhari, and the more we worship them with pure devotion, with love, Krishna says, Ye tamam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamiyaham. We worship Krishna in pure devotion. He reciprocates by becoming more and more manifest. And when he becomes manifest, then this place becomes more and more a dham. It becomes more and more potent. When we come into this environment, people are affected. People feel there's something special here. So the more devotional activity, the more pure devotional activity that is going on in a particular arena, the more the potency of the place increases. And therefore, everyone is benefited. So, with that concept in mind, New Vrajadam was established. The holy places are all there. And these books, they describe that parikram, which is non-different to Vrindavan parikram, because the holy places have been set out just like they are in Vrindavan. And to hear, how do we become Krishna conscious with all of the madness going on in our surroundings? We have to hear about Krishna. We have to read about Krishna. And we have to chant very attentively. I just request everyone to put their phones on silent. Thank you. So, Krishna's pastimes are wonderful. And we can absorb ourselves in these wonderful pastimes. This is the reason why he comes. He comes in order to enact wonderful pastimes which can steal our hearts. Because our hearts are stolen by something else. The material energy. The material energy is very attractive for the conditioned soul. When we try to chant Hare Krishna, then the mind, where does it go? It rushes towards the attachments, whatever they may be. We need to come to a stage where the mind is rushing towards Krishna. And the mind is like a butterfly going from one pastime to another. How do we do that? We have to hear about Krishna's pastimes. And Krishna's pastimes are so wonderful. Once Krishna became sick. He became so sick he just fell unconscious. And when Mother Yashoda saw that her darling son, actually in Vrindavan, almost everyone loves Krishna. Actually, everyone loves Krishna. You can't go into Vrindavan if you don't love Krishna. But some people, some of the residents, few of them, have a funny way of showing it. I'll explain. So Krishna falls sick. He's unconscious. And Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, they're beside themselves. They have no idea what they're going to do. How do they deal with this situation? Krishna's sick. He's unconscious. What if he's dead? So they're beside themselves. They start running around and shouting and screaming, and they're delirious. They don't know what to do. So then a doctor comes along, and actually this doctor is Krishna in disguise. So Krishna multiplies. So a doctor comes along. And so Mother Yashoda says, "Oh, doctor, you're here. You came just at the right time. It's amazing how you just walked down the street now. Please come and see my Krishna. He's sick. Please do something about it. Please help him." So the doctor takes his stethoscope. I mean, I'm sure, okay, 5,000 years ago they didn't have stethoscopes, but you know, the equivalent. And he looks to see what the symptoms are. So he does all of his tests, you know, feels a pulse, and, you know, looks like an expert doctor. He's just Krishna, but looks like an expert doctor. And he looks very gravely at Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, and he says, "Your son is very sick. There's only one cure. The most chaste lady of Vrindavan has to take..." So he said, "Please bring a pot, a clay pot. You know, in Vrindavan they carry everything around in clay pots. Please give me a clay pot." He takes the pot and he drills 1,000 holes into this pot at the bottom. And he says, "The cure for this situation is that the most chaste lady of Vrindavan has to take this pot to the river Yamuna, fill it with water, and bring that water here to sprinkle on Krishna. And with that water only, Krishna will be revived. Otherwise, certain death." So they're running around, they're thinking, who's going to do this? You know, who will carry out this task? So many of the great and good of Vrindavan, they come along, they volunteered, and they try to carry out this task. Because everyone loves Krishna, but all of them fail. No one's successful. So then, eventually, you know, Mother Yashoda is getting more and more worried as time goes on. And then she looks at the doctor, she says, "This doesn't seem to be working. What do we do? So many ladies in Vrindavan have tried. What do we do?" So then the doctor says that there's two particular ladies who you haven't tried, and I think that may be effective. So those two ladies are Jatila and Kutila. So these are the two that I was talking about. Jatila and Kutila are the mother-in-law and the sister-in-law of Srimati Radharani. Now, if anyone knows Indian families, then traditionally the mother-in-law is always a pain. Yeah? I hope there's no mother-in-law. There probably are some mother-in-laws in the room. If you're a mother-in-law, then give your daughter-in-law a break. But anyway, if you know, it's just tradition. The mother-in-law is often, you know, it's always depicted like that in movies and serials and so on also. The mother-in-law is always giving the daughter-in-law a hard time, always picking on her. So it's the same in Vrindavan. So Radharani is always getting a hard time from Jatila, who's her mother-in-law, and Kutila, who's her sister-in-law. Their names, Jatila and Kutila, you can just feel, you know, they're not very nice personalities. Of course, underlying it is pure love. Deep down, deep down is pure love. But this is all for the pastime. It's all to accentuate the pastime. And this is what Prabhupada says, actually, is a very nice phrase. Prabhupada says, everything going on in Vrindavan is for the exaltation of rasa. For the exaltation of rasa. That's what it's all about. Rasa means the flavors, the tastes. Yeah. So Radharani's getting a hard time. It's also a taste. It's also a flavor. And it enriches the experience of having to escape home. If she could leave home easily, then there's no problem. Then it's not as exciting, you know. Krishna is Rasa Raj. He loves to experience rasa, different tastes and flavors. He likes to fight also, and therefore there's demons in Vrindavan who appear because Krishna likes to experience the virya ras, the rasa of fighting. He fights with his cowherd boyfriends all the time. But that's different. They're his friends. When you have a play fight, it's one thing, but when you have a real fight with demons who really want to kill you, and you kill them, that's different. That's special. So Krishna likes all of these experiences, all of these tastes and flavors. So Jatila and Kutila are there, so then they come along. Mother Yashoda calls them actually. She knocks on the door and she explains the situation, and she says, the doctor, the Kaviraj, he said that you are the most chaste ladies of Vrindavan, you have to come. So they don't like Krishna very much, but they became very proud, you know, that they've been nominated for this role as the most chaste ladies of Vrindavan. So first Kutila tried. She took the clay pot. She went to the Yamuna. She filled it with water and very triumphantly carried it on her head. And she was drenched with water. And then Jatila started saying, you're a black mark on the family. You know, you're causing disgrace. You're unchaste. This is a clear sign you're unchaste. I always trusted you, but you're also, you know, a cheater. So then Jatila took the clay pot and she filled it with water. And she put it on her head, thinking she's the most chaste lady in Vrindavan. She's been nominated. And what happened to Jatila? She was also drenched with water. So Jatila and Kutila, Radharani's prime adversaries in Vrindavan, were disgraced. So then what does the doctor say? Almost hopeless. So there's one other possibility. There's one young lady who lives in the same household as this Jatila and Kutila. Her name is Radharani. Why don't you bring her? So then Jatila and Kutila said, never. She's a cheater. We've always suspected her. We've always suspected her. She could never do this task. That water will flow 100 miles an hour out of that pot. She's the most unchaste. Forget about the most chaste, she's the most unchaste. The doctor said, let's give it a try. Let's see. So then they bring Radharani, and Radharani's very shy. She's been called the most chaste lady in Vrindavan, and she feels that she's not. She's very humble also. Ultimately, she's the most chaste. Why? Because she's dedicated to Krishna. That is true chastity. That is the definition of chastity, not our material conceptions. So she goes, she takes the pot which has 1,000 holes. She fills it with water, and not a drop comes out from the pot. She takes it to Krishna, she takes it to the doctor. The doctor takes the water, sprinkles Krishna with that water, and in that way Krishna is revived. And everyone in Vrindavan celebrates. And they celebrate the chastity of Srimati Radharani. So these pastimes are very wonderful, very endearing. They bring great joy to the heart. And I just told a pastime, when you read these pastimes and the beautiful poetic way in which they've been written, they're really wonderful. There's 600 pastimes of Krishna. Some of you may have heard of this one. It's more of a famous one. But there's many which you'd never heard of before. They're from the writings of the Acharyas. A lot of research has gone into these books. And by reading and hearing about Krishna, we become naturally attracted to Krishna, and less attracted to the material energy. And in that way, we are filling that hole in the heart with a Krishna shape. And this is really, we have, there are so many books to read in Krishna consciousness, but we are the Krishna consciousness movement. And the essence has to be ultimately to learn about Krishna, to learn about Krishna's name, his form, his qualities, his pastimes, his abode, and his associates. and to fill our heads with those things. Because our heads are constantly being filled with so many other things. You just open the news and there's so much information. You know, once Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote a newspaper. He started a newspaper. I think it was called Nadia Daine Prakash, or Nadia Prakash, something like that. And it was a broadsheet newspaper, a big newspaper. And on the outside, it was filled with the politics and the economics and the sport and all of the things which you expect from a newspaper. This was published by the Gaudiya Math. And then on the inside, it was just full of the pastimes of Krishna going on in the spiritual world. And it was called an insight or a vision into Goloka. That inside, that's what it was called. So one of the devotees, and this was a daily publication. So one of the devotees was concerned. He said, we just started this newspaper. How will we continue this newspaper? You know, sort of, we'll run out of things to say. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, never. He said, the pastimes going on in the spiritual world are unlimited. There's always newer and newer, fresher and fresher pastimes going on. There's no limit. There's no limit. We could produce a newspaper we're doing it every day. We could produce a newspaper every hour. We could produce a newspaper every minute, every second. And we would still have something new and fresh to say, because Nava Navaya, Vrindavan, is always fresh and always new. They say that in Vrindavan, every step is a dance, every word is a song, and every day is a festival. So we have to come in touch with that Vrindavan, with Krishna, with his associates and his pastimes. And by reading and hearing about these things continuously again and again, then naturally bhakti towards Krishna, devotion towards Krishna will be evoked. And naturally we will be able to think of Krishna, to be able to meditate on Krishna, and to find great bliss in doing so. I'm going to stop there and just see if there's a few minutes. I've got a few minutes. I'm going to show a video. But if there's any questions or comments or corrections before that, then please. A little bit about my journey. I'll be quick, Prabhu. A little bit about my journey. So I was born in London. My parents are from North India, from Punjab. So my mother especially was always worshipping Krishna. She would read Bhagavad Gita every day. A month or two after I was born, she received her first book by Srila Prabhupada. It was the Brahma Vimohana Leela. So they were distributing on the streets in London, they were distributing just a few chapters of the 10th canto, small books with a few chapters from the 10th canto. So she received one of those, she started to read that, she started to read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna book, and so on. And so she would tell us about Krishna when I was young. Our bedtime stories were from the Krishna book, or the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the two, depending on our choice or mood. I came in touch with ISKCON and the devotees over the years when I was young in various forums. But it was when I went to university. I was studying economics at Cambridge in England. And that's when I really dived into Krishna consciousness. That's when I started to practice seriously. So I was chanting and reading when I was younger, but that's when I started to chant 16 rounds. And that's when I started to read and study Srila Prabhupada's books. At a certain point, I really had an inclination towards becoming a monk when I was at university, but I had to complete my degree. I worked in banking for 1.5 years, and that was a wonderful experience. It was a good experience in the sense that it really gave me a taster for what the working world is like, and it really helped me to make a decision as to what I wanted to do with my life. And that was to dedicate it to two things. One is to internally developing my Krishna consciousness, and that really requires work. It's not a walk in the park. Actually, Krishna consciousness, it's not like visiting the church on a Sunday. You just go, there's a story, I'll tell it quickly. There's a man, and he goes for confession to church every Sunday. And he goes for confession, confesses all his sins to the priest, and then slips him $20, as a donation, And then next week he comes, and then, Monday onwards, carry on sinning. And by the end of the week, he built up quite a collection. So then he goes again on a Sunday, confession, slips him 20, and then, carries on with his activities for the rest of the week. Third week, he comes, confesses, and then gives 40. And then the priest asks him, hey, how come you gave 40 this time? I mean, I'm not one to look gift horse in the mouth, but why 40? He said, next week I'm on holiday, so I'm just paying in advance. So this kind of ritualistic approach to religion, it's not really what Krishna consciousness, it's not what Krishna consciousness is about. It is a full-time job, actually. To really purify the heart, to really develop an attachment and attraction towards Krishna requires time, effort and dedication, but it's very much worth it. It's the most important endeavor. Savai pumsam paro dharma. It is the paro dharma, it is the greatest duty of man to learn and develop attachment towards God. Because this is the only way that we'll actually be happy. This is the only thing that really fulfills and satisfies. So the more I understood that, the little experiences which helped me to gain faith in these statements, helped me to make the decision that I wanted to dedicate my life to developing myself and sharing that with others. So our mission is twofold. It's a mission within and a mission without. And that's really why we've come here to America also, is to share Krishna with the devotees. Not me, but whatever I'm receiving is being passed on. It's okay, sir?
Yeah. Thank you.
So please come regularly to the temple, support the temple's activities. That'll be your preaching, and also have your own spiritual practice. Read and chant about Krishna, and in that way develop your own internal Krishna consciousness, please. Hare Krishna. Prabhu?
Well, it's 10 minutes to 7, and when the next kirtan starts at 7, so I don't think I have time for my question.
Okay. So we have a video, and Prabhu's going to play the video. So this is really about the books outside that I mentioned. This is Srila Shivram Swami Maharaj. He's my spiritual master, and he's just speaking briefly about these books. And yeah, please, after the video and after the arati, please come outside. We have a book table. Take a look at the books, and please take a set. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's a pleasure to be with you, albeit virtually. I'm here accompanying Ananda Caitanya and his crew to introduce to you Nava, Vraja, Mahima. This is a book that I wrote 10 years ago. It's actually in 9 volumes. And its inspiration for me was Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book that I just couldn't get enough of when I first put my hands on it a long time ago. And but since then I've heard so many other pastimes of Krishna, and I really wanted to be able to make these pastimes available in good quality English to the devotee audience. So I collected 600 of my favorite pastimes and I put them in this book. It's about the pastimes of Krishna solely in Vrindavan and projected on the canvas of New Vrajadam, or Krishna Valley here in Hungary. Therefore the name Nava Vraja Mahima, the Mahima glories of New Vrajadam. It took me 5 years to write this book, and that was 12-hour days, 7 days a week. It's 9 volumes. One of those volumes is a map book. There are maps here of all of the pastime places, coordinates, and along with the coordinates, then you can refer to a summary of the pastimes that took place there, and they will also send you to the pages where those pastimes go on here in detail. As you can see, this book is very beautiful, and it is a very beautiful book. It's printed here in Hungary. The paper on which it's printed is very high quality paper. This is called Paust in Hungarian. I don't know what it's called in English. Onion paper. And there are 600 pictures in the book, so it's very attractive to the children as well. It's the binding itself is not going to fall apart when you read it. The paper is not going to yellow and just sort of dissolve in 10 years. This book is good for many lifetimes, like other books were. It's gold leafed, gold stamped. It's a quality production. My purpose is not to make money. In fact, we subsidize these books. But my purpose is really to be absorbed in Krishna's pastimes. Writing is my bhajan, and I'm trying to share those pastimes and that bhajan with devotees, because I think that this is what Srila Prabhupada really wanted us to do. This book is for all ages. So it's good for children, it's good for adults. It's not a children's book, but it's like Krishna book, minus a lot of the philosophy. The pastimes are pretty straightforward, and there's very minimal philosophy in them. And the books are ISKCON friendly. My target audience is devotees of ISKCON, and so the book is written with references by Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas. Prabhupada wanted us to learn how to love Krishna. He said, I want you to be mad for Krishna. So this is what our Krishna consciousness movement is about. But how do you learn how to love somebody? You have to know them. You have to know about them. And how do we get to know about Krishna? We have to hear about him. We don't yet have the eyes to see him, but we actually can hear about him from Shastra. And this is what Shastra is really all about. Hear about his pastimes, his beauty, his qualities, his friends, his abode, Vrindavan, the trees, the birds, everything that is actually just made of pure love for Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada wanted his followers to write. Yes, of course, our primary books are Srila Prabhupada's books, and then the books of our acharyas. But Srila Prabhupada wanted us to replace all the literature that exists in the world by Krishna conscious literature. And our family business is book printing, book writing, and book reading. So I'm doing this as a service to Krishna. I hope I'm doing this as a service to you and your family. And my desire really is that you have a set of these books in your bookshelf, and that you also get to read them. This is the second printing of Nava Vraja Mahima. We had a first printing of 700 volumes. They just went in 1 year. We ran out of books, and then all of a sudden devotees became mad to get some more. Okay, so here they are now. And we've actually never really had any presentation of this book here in the United States. That's why Ananda Caitanya is there to make this set of books available to everyone. After this, there will not be a third printing for a long, long time. I'm writing on Vilapa Kusumanjali. The first volume of that is going to be out at the end of this year. It's a 5-volume production also. So you won't be seeing this book for a long time. Therefore, please purchase one now. We've gone to a lot of effort to actually make it available. Hare Krishna, thank you very, very much. And come visit us here in New Vrajadam, see what it's all about.
Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Nittai Gaur Premanandi. So thank you very much for everyone for your attention, and I wish you a wonderful evening, wonderful kirtan, and like I said, please meet us outside and take a look at the books in the flesh. Thank you. Hare Krishna.